Hey, it's Shabes, and welcome to another edition of AniTube Digest. We're going over the best and the not-so-best anime YouTube videos to come out this past 2 weeks, from the 17th of October to the 30th of October. I'm sorry that took so long. I missed my window of opportunity. I have weird habits and stuff. I screwed up. I should have had Digest out last week, and I didn't. And now we're here. We're doing 2 weeks worth of Digest. And first for a video, yeah, I thought it was not good. It's a soft not good. It's okay. It's fine. It's just a little outdated. I don't know. There's stuff with Anime America. I don't watch her videos that often, but I clicked on this one because it's an obscure title. Witch Hunter Robin? Not very few people talk about this one, and it's exciting to see. I'm also appreciative that she's kind of one of the only people that are making a Halloween themed video or releasing one. Or whatever. Maybe because Halloween hasn't actually happened yet and people are actually waiting for it to drop it on the day. But I just feel like, you kind of have to put the stuff out before the 31st so that people can get in the spooky season type of people. I can maybe understand that's why the lack of not as haunting kind of videos have come out. But yeah, if Hot Topic made an anime, and that really gives it all away right there, where it's like, that's her whole angle. That like this came out in 2002, and she was in like junior high or high school around that time, and she remembers the hype around the Matrix, and she kind of creates this character like, hey, you want to go to Hot Topic? And because that's what this show is, I guess. And at one point she literally just like, look, they're wearing long coats. It proves my point. Like, that's it. I don't know. I feel like there could have been more. I like the connection for what it's. I think it's kind of an interesting observation, or something one that it reminds me of, and something that she enjoys. She's not like using this as a point of criticism or something that's dated her in some way. Although she does keep saying it's of its era, of its era, of its era. But its era. It's not really of America, because all the things that she's referencing, Charmed, Angel, Buffy, The Matrix, My Chemical Romance. My Chemical Romance was not in this era. The albums that she's referencing, Black Parade and Three Sister, their previous album, it came out in like 2004 and 6, like really kind of late in that period. And then Buffy and all them is like 98 into 2000, and that's more of the realm. Witch Hunter Robin is 2002 in the Japanese broadcast, and then it was aired in 2004 around the end point of these shows that she's talking about, and way since like the entire Matrix trilogy came out. I don't know, the dates were a little weird to me for the sake of influence, because she's like, oh, this show is clearly inspired by this era or whatever, and I think it's kind of a loose assumption to make. But even putting aside the loose assumption, which it's like that itself kind of like, it's because this show may have aired at this point in the United States, but did any of the shows that she's talking about air in Japan? I didn't do a super long, hour-long deep dive trying to figure it out, but I don't think they did. I know Buffy aired in the UK, but that's kind of it. I don't really know if any of these actually got an international broadcast, be outside the United States, let alone specifically Japan, enough for the animation director here and Sunrise to be inspired. And it's like, I feel like there could have been interviews. I didn't see. Here's the thing, right? I'm not the one making this video, so I'm not the one. Like, I'm not going to go out of my way to find any Japanese interviews, new types with the creator here, with the director, in terms of the impetus of this project, of what they were inspired by. They clearly, that some interviews must have been made, but I guess maybe it's 2002 and maybe not. I don't know. But at least in Japanese, not on Wikipedia, because clearly the Wikipedia doesn't have anything like that, and that might have been all she looked at. And I'm not going to make any assumptions. I didn't see any further research besides that, really. It's just sort of what she gets out of vibes and, oh, the year. It's very surface level. And it just kind of calls back to the kind of era that she's making videos from like 2010 or 9 or 8. Like really old. Even down to like the text and the very old-fashioned intro where Billy, it's Halloween, spooky season. I'm like, I'm back at Channel Awesome. Damn. I don't think she was really going for that necessarily, but it's like, of that. And the only reason I know this video wasn't just like a re-upload is that she's using reaction images from like Kobayashi's Dragon Maid. So that at least dates the video to 2017. So like, okay. And then like there might be one or two. She does the thing at the end where she kind of does a lot of AMV hell style edits where but it's the same, but that's the annoying thing. It was like the same clip. It was like the same 3 clips, but just overlaid different musical, different jokes, different audio and everything, but it's the same. It didn't feel like especially clever, only because you were using the exact same clips over and over and over and over and over. And it's like, okay. And I don't know. The things were fine, kind of fine. I don't know. But they were all reserved at the end, of course. I still like that as kind of a community outreach thing of some people like suggesting funny ideas or edit things or whatever. But it just didn't feel as immersed in the show itself, and I'm not asking to get into spoilers or anything. But maybe that is necessary. I don't know. I just feel like there should have been more details than what was given. And again, I'm sorry I'm bouncing all over the place. It's like one thing to like, oh, this show is inspired by these other titles that the director probably never even experienced or anything. But like, okay, putting that aside, what about these in particular, that really reminds you besides the coat, and what's cool about it? Why do you enjoy these sorts of things? Which I would have appreciated. I have very little connection to Buffy and Charmed and Angel. What are some aspects of those titles that kind of elicit that sort of emotion that's fun, because I like I like My Chemical Romance a lot. But I wasn't of that emo goth kind of era. I don't know if emo and goth are kind of different. They're different terms, very slightly. Kind of the difference between spooky and scary, right? Maybe a little more different than that. But yeah, I don't know. I was just gonna get left wanting more from this video, I guess. Especially because I know very little about Witch Hunter Robin, right? So yeah, I guess maybe that made me interested in watching it, because now I'm like, well, do I have to make the the interesting Witch Hunter Robin video? Which, again, I'm sorry, that's comes off insulting or something, but yeah, it did come off as just like, God, I have to make it myself now. I don't know, but yeah, sorry, I didn't get too much out of this, unfortunately. Is this video by replay value? I'm like, I don't want to give it a not good, but like, I don't know. I just was left I was like, okay. So obviously, a defensive mid-anime elicits some emotion out of me, and I know that's the intention, and clearly getting decent traffic out of it, all things considered. And I think I do get, after rewatching this video like 3 times, because honestly, I kind of didn't get his point. I didn't really get it until kind of rewatch and trying to get it. But I think, if I'm right, the idea is you should be watching mid anime, and the idea of what mid is kind of the difficult term because I'm like, what are you talking about? It's important to watch these mid titles to then extrapolate the things that you like or that you wouldn't have checked out otherwise. Being like, oh, I realize about myself that I like complicated world building from this mid show, Fire Force. So that led me to watch this other show. I don't know. It was very like slippery. And it was just like kind of wait, but because it's all predicated on the idea that you find these shows mid in the first place. Did you think they were mid and intentionally watch them like, this is gonna be mediocre, I'm gonna watch it? Like, was that the mentality you went into this? Because I guess to me, I can't relate, because I'm going into shows wanting to really enjoy them, That was sort of like my weird thing about it. And then because I kind of agree where you're coming from, where it has no profile. It doesn't have clout. It's not a legacy classic or has something interesting going on. It's just a show. Is just an anime that is coming out this season. They're like, why not? You know, and because I think one point they was like, yes, I am going to watch another one of these shows from these seasonals. You described some kind of whatever kind of show it was. I don't want to make assumptions. I forget. Instead of this classic, I should be watching. Instead of like, oh, I haven't watched Steins Gate yet. I haven't seen Trigun yet. I don't, you know, and this is something I can kind of relate to because I am kind of a clout chaser when it comes to what I watch. I watch stuff that I've heard very good things about, or things that have a legacy behind them that kind of like, oh, that fills a really interesting piece of anime history. So the first Precure, Futari Precure, I kind of didn't have that much interest. Besides the fact that it's the first work after Ashino Naja and their next foray into magical girls proper after Ojamaja Doremi, Toei at least. And it's obviously the start of this really massive franchise. Now, it doesn't necessarily, from what I can understand, it is not completely indicative of what the franchise would become. It still develops a little more in like Yes or Go Precure, I forget which one. But the first one where they have 5 Precure, a little closer to the Sailor Moon adjacent, but it sets up a formula of sorts. And I'm kind of watching it for educational, but I'm not going to call it mid because I haven't watched it yet. You know, I think mid is, I don't know if mid is supposed to be a representative of profile or popularity or just like, we've all agreed this is mediocre, right? Like mid on whose standards? Because I would imagine it would have to be mid on your standards. And so so that's why my brain is kind of in knots, because of like, that could just be anything. You could just say Sangatsu is mid and we're all like, excuse me? Yeah, right. I know that Nisekoi was the title that you were like, oh, that got me to understand that I really like Shaft's direction or visuals or something. And like, that's fair. And that's why it's like, okay, you can watch this show because it's directed by this guy who did this other thing that I really like. I'm watching Pluto because it's Naoki Urasawa. And who is Naoki Urasawa? I've seen Monster. I love Monster. So I'm going to watch. I watched the first episode, like one of the first scenes when the first time you see Gesicht, he just opens his eyes and he's waking up, and then like, oh, we are so back. Like, yeah, there's a connection there, and obviously there's the pedigree of Astro Boy and everything like that. And Masao Moriyabu project. There's reasons, and I'm not saying you have to have a reason to watch something. No, if any, sometimes it's fun when you have absolutely you're going off of one shot. You're going off of a friend's word of mouth or something like that. I don't know. I guess we just kind of watch stuff differently, which is fair. And so I'm not really calling this video bad or not good, even though I'm kind of putting it in that category. Like really daintily, because I think you make decent enough points. I guess I would have really appreciated going into this crux of an idea of mid and your defense of it, and I get it with expanding your palette and to kind of exposing yourself to maybe not as good titles so that you appreciate the ones that are incredible, kind of I guess. And I'm not to dissuade people from not watching those shows. Absolutely not. But I guess I would have liked you to dwell in that a little bit more than kind of making the video about Fire Force and Nisekoi. Fire Force into Akadama Drive, and then Nisekoi into a little bit of Sangatsu, but you kind of were like, oh, you get the idea. I don't. I was like, I really would have appreciated, instead of delineating on particular shows and as examples or whatever, I guess as a more general. But then again, yeah, I feel like the concept is so and slippery, because any anime you do show, it's like, what are you calling the show mid? You kind of have to provide a reason for it and whatever, and that's extremely tedious. And you want to have more of a basis to stand on for honest discussion than like having to defend yourself every 5 seconds, which I completely get. I don't know. I guess in this case, you're providing concrete examples, which is what I normally like seeing. But I guess this idea is such a theoretical kind of concept that I just really am interested in. I was eager to click on this. I think as several people were, and then it's he didn't quite fully like yeah, I don't know. And I don't know what the word in particular where it's not like I'm not saying this to disagree with you or something. Maybe I am. I don't know. And obviously we're watching stuff differently. That's true too. But yeah, I couldn't get around this one. I keep looking at that. I'm like, not as like a sense of like, oh, how dare you call these things mids? It's more frustration of like, what did you mean? What were you cooking? What was he cooking? I really want, and not have out of a like, ooh, that was bad. What was he cooking? It was more like a, what is this? What is the and one? I don't know. It's more of a, I guess, if that makes sense. I don't know if it does. This would probably be just as confusing as I don't know. But yeah, I'm happy. Yeah. All right. Now for some videos that I thought were decent, pretty good, pretty good. This first was from ComicTropes. I don't think I've talked about his channel before. Pretty active. Pretty seems to have been doing this for a long time. Doesn't talk too much about anime and manga, but Why Osamu Tezuka is called the godfather of manga. And the dude went, props to him. He starts the video just being like, "Hey, I'm outside the Tezuka Museum in Takarazuka. Holy crap!" And I am not one to be like, "Oh, I'm actually about Tezuka," because I'm just learning about him myself for the first time, really. With the book from Helen McCarthy, I've shown it on Digest before. It was nice that he actually went the distance and visited the museum itself in Japan. That's pretty cool. And I think he has a pretty easygoing, kind of classic delivery style and everything. And it's mostly biographical. It's almost entirely just like his life and everything. And I don't know if necessarily he's fully able to answer the Godfather question. For 22-minute video, it doesn't feel as, it still feels like an overview. And maybe that's credit to Tezuka's extremely big career and everything. But it just didn't feel as dense or cohesive. I don't know if cohesive is really the word. It felt very like, oh, he did this, but it felt like coming from him, there was just something about the way he's presenting the information, unlike someone like Gaijin Guy, where I can tell he knows what he's talking about. Instead of kind of like, are you just kind of echoing what you read in the big omnibus that talks very biased and positively about Tezuka? Obviously, they could maybe make the same thing about Helen's book, but again, Helen's book, there's something about the tone of it where they're treating him like an individual and not like a deity. There's something about like the amount of information you're giving, the context. But here in a video format, you're kind of being a little more snappy, and it doesn't land as much. And I'm not expecting a full-fledged, everything every time. It's okay if he doesn't focus on certain titles and not others. But it was weird that, like, for his shortcomings, one of them is his foray into animation. I mean, maybe it's a failure in some people's perspective. I definitely don't see it that way. Okay. Or just like talking about the budgets and things like that. I think, yeah, there was it was very surface level, I guess. But I mean, it seemed fine enough and decent with the information, everything. I don't know. I guess I was expecting more. Well, like maybe I've been like tasted the fruits of with Helen's labor here with how detailed. I'm only on chapter 3 or so, and I'm only in the Akahon period before he wrote, around the time where he wrote Kimba, just about that cusp. And I'm already like that breadth of detail with his early childhood and everything, and that period with Shin Takarajima and everything is just really interesting. But maybe that's just my perspective, I guess. I'm happy he brings up the star system. And then the other thing I will mention with this video, maybe it could have been better. Maybe I don't know, but like the image choice for some of this was really rough. I don't know if it was because of the only thing he could show, I highly doubt that several of these images are in the are only available in the quality that he's showing them. I highly doubt that. And like some of these are crusty, like 144p, like really, really crusty. And that doesn't make sense to me. I feel like someone as accessible as Tezuka, or as popular as Tezuka, like it, you got these off Google Images. Like, don't get me wrong, Google Images works when it works. You know, that I get it from there all the time. But like settling for the quality for some of these images, they're like, yeah, that works. That's fine. Oh, I don't know. It's a visual medium that Tezuka's working in. You should be able to see it well in decent quality. I'm not looking for 4K, but geez, like this is some of the image quality was completely unacceptable in my like I would ugh, I don't know, or at least show it in a way that's like tiny and I don't know. I don't know. It was just really, really weird. Not the most kind of rudimentary presentation style, but it works. It works. Yeah, I enjoyed the video ultimately. I don't think he was anything super flagrantly. Maybe there was, but again, I don't know too much with Tezuka and the full perspective. I just know that with Tezuka, you kind of have to give it a grain of salt because he is deified, and there is a lot of other people in his life that were kind of responsible for where he got. There are other people in his space that were doing similar things that just didn't go viral the same way that Tezuka did. Things that Tezuka took that were not original, but because he's doing it and that's the first time he's done it, he must be the first. Like, no, you know, like crediting in certain ways and everything. It was, yeah, I don't feel like you get the full story in that way. So I feel like any video like this I take with a giant grain of salt, but this seemed fine, not as super hyperbolic maybe as other videos might have been. Yeah, I think it was fine. I also like they gave recommendations at the end with like I really like Phoenix and really likes the biography, that manga tome that he talked about. That's cool. Racist. The Skycrawlers review from Select and Pause. It's Joe's. I think this is the first video that Joe's doing like in this format where it seems weekly and taking a movie unscripted, kind of his solicited thoughts. I just realized he has done. This is the third video he's done like this. That's crazy. Where it's him in the middle and then the thumbnail, and then just like that. I didn't realize he also did an RRR review. I really gotta watch that because I love RRR. Anyway. Yeah, I mean, maybe it's probably an inside joke or something, but I don't necessarily think he talks about anything like that in the video itself about Skycrawlers, but it's his kind of unscripted thoughts about this movie. I really like how he starts it with, it feels like a very Ebert kind of review, I guess, where it feels like you know, talking about Oshii as what he's perceived as, and then your experience with watching this movie. Has like, I watched it a couple years ago and this is how I felt about it, and this is how I feel about it now, and certain specific things that you took away from it. I don't think you give any spoiler warnings, but you seem to give away spoilers towards the end, but it's so vague. You word it in such a way or so nonchalantly that I didn't feel it was spoilers. I actually don't know what happens really. I kind of maybe, but I like the observations, especially with the flying vehicles, contrasting them with Miyazaki's depiction of aerial aircraft. Yeah, yeah. I felt very like, yeah, I easy, casual, which I think was what you were going for. I will say that it was a kind of a jump scare that the way this video ends, because I thought. I've watched it twice because I watched it last week and then I didn't record digest, so I watched it again, and it just goes completely goes fast, and the way you end it makes it feels like a midpoint to put like a mid-roll ad, and like you're gonna have more thoughts, but then suddenly it's the end of the video. I'm like, oh, and I guess I've not. Sometimes especially for, you know, I try not to be one of those hounds with like constantly checking a video's runtime of like, oh, how far into the video are we? Sometimes I'm like that, and that happens. But I'm not with your videos for whatever reason. I think just because you have such a captivating, way of speaking and presence and everything, and I like your stuff, so I usually don't. And so when it finished, I was like, oh, it kind of, and I get that's just how it is, where it's like, yep, that's all I have to say. Even if you have something like Charlie, where it's like, that's about it, see ya, then it's like, okay, yeah, it's like, yeah, I just wanted to talk about it. That's about it, see ya. Not that I'm explicitly asking you to have that exact outro, but yeah, this outro didn't feel like an outro. It just felt like in the middle. You're in the middle of discussing it. I guess it didn't feel as complete. Although the points itself, especially when I watch back, it's like, yeah, these are pretty complete points without making a full-fledged scripted analysis type of video about it. I like you making this sort of thing, actually. I really actually no, yeah, it was really good. I would dig weekly ones of this for sure. Looking forward to the future stuff, future vids like this. But I know you're also working on another. Is that 2 hours, Joe? Is that a 2-hour video I'm seeing that you're working on? No. I'm especially because I know how much you put into this stuff, how much you put into these videos. That for 2 hours? Like, I don't know. Just not that I have those expectations, but I mean, come on. Yeah. Anyway, I really enjoyed this. Yeah. Shonen Showdown. I don't remember the last time I've talked about them. I don't. Maybe I haven't. I don't know. Anime characters playing basketball in real life, and it's Kuroko no Basket, and it's not as parodic as you might expect. I like that this was kind of half parody, half challenge video, or just kind of fun experience thing where it's a real basketball game. They didn't really fake anything. It's hard to fake something like that. With sports fiction, I don't envy them. That is very difficult to make it feel like a real game or whatever, especially basketball. So it's to my knowledge, it feels like a real game. And they're all, wearing mics and wigs and stuff like that. Like, kind of hard to play in this, and it's sort of deal. And obviously they're playing kind of the miracle generator. I haven't seen Kuroko yet. I've seen the first episode, and I know some things about it. But I like that each character had his own challenge, and somehow they actually, I think, actually the blonde hair character, I don't think successfully completed his challenge. But is what but I like that. I liked that structure actually. And then yeah, it was just a game, and it was fun. Yeah, there isn't too much to like. They show some personality in between the quarters. There isn't as many timeouts. It's just in between quarters where they're able to converse with each other, and you can kind of tell. I haven't seen Kuroko. I don't know how accurate it is or how strong a presence it is, but you can kind of tell that they are trying to also act like their characters as well as playing them and everything. And it's not just kind of a lazy attempt with whatever. So that was nice, but it's brief because it's only in little snippets and stuff. I like that they didn't go for like full parodic thing, but I mean, again, I like this sort of positive, constructive representation of embracing sort of an anime related thing. Obviously, they seem to like Kuroko. It doesn't feel punching down, and and it's fun and engaging type of deal. So I enjoyed the video. Yeah, again, it's really just 14 minutes of a real of just an actual basketball game. And I will say, like, part of the appeal with sports anime, specifically at least in my opinion, with basketball, something like Slam Dunk. I love Slam Dunk, but one of my favorite things is just being able to, as a fan, having an intimate understanding of the score and how far ahead or behind one team is over another. That's a really key piece. Otherwise, it's just endless back and also the timer. So the endless back and forth of them just like missing shots, taking shots, it becomes like a blur. And it's enjoyable still. It's fun if you enjoy the sport, but it doesn't have that game feeling. They only ever showed the score at the end of each quarter. And then maybe there's its own kind of suspense and intrigue in that way. You don't quite know, but I felt like as a viewer watching a basketball game here, even just highlights of one, even if you have to like cut things out and the points update in a little while, in a bit, I don't know. I feel like if there was some, if you like, obviously you filmed the whole thing and then cut it up and everything. So like if you had the score, if you would kept track of the score, and maybe the score wasn't real and that was part of you were just shooting whatever. Maybe, I don't know, but I think it seemed like a real enough game. I think that's interesting. Anyway, yeah, I think like that could have been a potential improvement, I guess, because yeah, as a person who like enjoys sports, I like knowing who's winning. I like knowing the score and how much time is left, you know? Can you imagine like not having that at like a football game or a baseball game or even again a basketball game where like they only occasionally show the timer and score? No, it's always there, right? Because it's a constant pressure for the players as well as the audience. You know, the audience knows about it, but the players know the score too. And that influences their decision making. Sometimes they might take more risks if they're behind, or, you know, if they're ahead, they kind of have a certain attitude about them. You know, that influences the game. So the audience should know what the score is as often as possible. Anyway, I pedantic. Yeah, I enjoyed the video though. That Kodocha girl releasing a new video on the darkest shoujo manga you probably never heard of, and I'm not gonna lie. I think I think I didn't click on this video at first because I'm just like, it's Kodocha. That's it. Because all of it, and look, don't get me wrong. I think having the entire channel mostly dedicated to one series is great. Really interesting. And especially for a shoujo series, right? Because like you get that with DBZ and One Piece and JoJo's all the time, but having for a series like this, especially when it hasn't come out, it's not a recurring series either, is really interesting. Obviously it's not, but it is by the same author, so there is some connection. So it's like, okay. But this was recommended in my Discord twice. So I'm like, yeah, you know, I should give it a try. But I think the reason I was avoiding it, I guess, is because I really want to see Kodocha. I don't think I'm watching it next year. I might. I made the list of shoujo titles I want to watch that I actually still have really intense interest in, as well as the magical girl stuff. I don't think it's quite on the docket, but I still really want to watch it, and so I don't want to expose myself to too much other videos of it. And that was why. that could have been why. Yeah, but it's not. It's about Partner, same author, 3 volumes. I usually like knowing how long a manga is or an anime is. Sometimes the anime it doesn't matter as much, but manga, for whatever reason, I always really want to gauge how long something is, whether it's still ongoing or anything, just to understand the breadth of it, right? If it's 1 volume, then it's like, okay, like one shot, yeah. And you can kind of you setting expectations on a scale or whatever. I don't know, maybe you've mentioned it somewhere, but I think that was one element that I was missing when watching the video. The video is really well presented. I think it just has, it's similar, kind of like very standard manga panel, you know, sliding and zoom ups and everything like that. Kind of similar panels, used a lot of similar ones, but that makes more sense because it's only like 14 chapters or something like that, like 3 volumes, 14 chapters, I think. At least that's what Mal is saying. I'm not really sure. But the bulk of the video, I think it was at like the 5-minute mark or 4-minute that she gives the spoiler warning and tells you skip time to the end or the conclusion of sorts. So the bulk of the video is really just recounting the entire thing. And there are some details that she says she didn't include. That's fine. I just felt like that was where the real substance and meat was. I feel like if I skipped that spoiler point, I wouldn't have gotten too much else out of it. I don't know how much I would have learned about it, or anything you were saying about the thematic or the themes and everything like that wouldn't connect if you don't say what they are. Like I get, and that's why you can kind of have the spoiler warning at the beginning. It's like, I'm going to talk about the whole thing, but it's only this long. So that's just it. It's kind of like with describing a short anime, right? Like if you're talking about House of Small Cubes, I don't know how substantive it would be if you don't mention how it ends, if you don't mention the whole thing, if you don't talk about it substantively. It's like, hey, if you really want to know what it like, go read it really quick. I read it, like, as you say, you read it in like a day, or like the weekend or whatever. So it's like, oh, and read it and come back and but just preface it with that, and then just go all in with it. I don't think you needed a whole kind of spoiler section unless it was really, really brief, like 5 seconds or something. But it was the bulk of the video, So I think that was the thing for me. And obviously I would watch it because if I was to talk about it on Digest, which I was interested in, because I want to talk about more female creators. I want to talk about more shoujo stuff. I want to expand now that I've had my shonen feast, like watched most of the really important stuff from Shonen Jump. I'm not quite finished with it, but like I'm pretty much done. Now I really want to go to the other side, being like, okay, Ribbon is a really big magazine. See, like that's the thing. I think Ribbon. I was like, I had this thought when I was watching the video. I'm like, is Ribbon the Shonen Jump of shoujo? In terms of like the big one, right? But there's several big. There's a little more evenly split than Shonen, I think. Than the yeah. But where was I going with that? Sorry. Yeah, but like, yeah, I wanted to watch this so I'm gonna watch the whole thing. And yeah, I just felt like I understood this series now that I knew what it actually was, which is going into the whole sci-fi concept, and it feels like a part of the premise. And I don't know how far into the story this is introduced, really. But like a lot of the details when you're starting to describe it was really when I was starting to get interested and invested in it. Even just from your description, which I thought was very detailed and involving and good, and good. Yeah. There isn't as much focus on the mangaka's art. I think a lot of the styling, you kind of just assumed the viewer knows about it because this is a Kodocha channel. It's like, oh yeah, it's Kodocha. Yeah, at least that felt that way to me as a viewer. Doesn't watch too much of your stuff because I'm trying to be invested. I'm still wanting to watch Kodocha and kind of fresh and not watching other videos before that. But yeah, so I felt like there could have been more about the styling and how the shoujo aesthetics complement or even contrast in a palatable way, in a way that's like, ooh, that's great, with this darker, scientific kind of more morbid type of content, which I think would be really interesting to analyze, I guess, where it's like, oh, the contrast of like this beautiful guy, like the professor character, being very androgynous and beautiful, despite his like wicked things that he's doing, that's sort of like a little more playing into that, because I feel like that's a large part for me of the what would be interesting to seek out from shoujo is mostly the aesthetics. And maybe I'm talking out my ass, but like that from the ones I've seen, I've really enjoyed the vibes in contrast to whatever its subject matter is, whether that is it's drama, it's tragedy, darker elements, basically. I've always loved that like sugar and salty sweet type of flavor, I guess, if that makes any sense. Yeah. Yeah, but I liked the video a good deal. I just think that, yeah, like the spoiler section, just have it at the beginning and just be like, look, it's 3 volumes. And even give them like one thing that's like the scene of I know this is in your spoiler section, sorry I'm spoiling it here, but like the scene, I don't even know how early on this is, where one of their friends, after she's the scene with like them pulling her arm and the thing that happens with pulling their arm, that like give them that little tease and be like, ooh. And it's by the same author as Kodocha, right? I think it's all the hook you need. And then you can spend the rest of the video really talking about it. And it's like, if you're still not convinced and you just want to watch this anyway, like that's cool. But I really want to talk about it substantively. And you do. I think it was really great. Yeah, I enjoyed the video. And am I interested in reading it? Well, unfortunately, I'm not as much of a manga guy. I might. It's a lot of manga. But yeah, I liked it. Speaking of manga, the genius paneling of Luffy versus Buggy, and the precise chapter. I like that Werb just talks about the one chapter, beginning to end. And then and the pattern that he's uploading, where he's talking about the latest One Piece chapter whenever there's a new one, and then on break weeks he does a kind of a throwback chapter. Really nice idea. At least as someone who really enjoys One Piece, might get into some kind of content. The only reason I'm not as I'm doing I'd have a very irregular podcast, but other than that, I'm trying to avoid making videos about One Piece because I really want to experience and understand it as a whole. I want it to end first. That's just my personal thing. But I have my, I'm making my various recordings of where I was in my stages and stuff like that. That's kind of unserious and everything. But I do like that this sort of analysis can happen anytime, regardless of the series being done or not. And it's just the how the eye is being directed in this chapter, and what to focus on, the kind of the quality of the fight, and not talking about anything thematic or characterization, as a little characterization, but really talking about Oda's craft as a manga artist, and the way he's paneling things, and the way the eye is being directed, and the composition of each panel, which I really like. I think the most clever, or like kind of like the best type of paneling, is stuff that you're never going to notice. It's like editing, right? Where it's completely unobtrusive. You're just immersed in the story. It doesn't feel like it's overstaying its welcome or something, or not overstaying its welcome. It's calling attention to itself. Sometimes it's fun. Sometimes that's really warranted as its own form of excitement. I don't think that's something to disparage completely, but something very unflashy. Ironic with Buggy. Something very unflashy is kind of the stuff that's most rich for analysis, really. Very noticeably, Werb does not take into consideration the entire chapter. Very deliberately seems to skip over any panels of Nami and her reactions to this sort of thing, which I think is important with the grand scheme of the story, but that's not what Werb is focusing on. I think it's just the fight and its choreography and it's the way it's being playing with audience's expectations, and the way the story is being told mechanically, and not as much like adding as an additive part to the story. So I like the analysis and the function of it. It's not as holistic and complete as I would have wanted it, in terms of like talking a little bit more about the grand scheme of the story. But you know what, I will say, I'll admit that it was a week since I watched it, and I didn't rewatch it because I'm like, I feel like I get it. But I do remember a couple of points you would make with kind of just making these grand statements about the One Piece anime or other things. And I get it's kind of like a one-off, kind of like a whatever point. But with how I feel like those points married to how close you're looking at this, going panel by panel, page by page, and really taking it on its face, making these grand gestures about anime's pace or the other thing. Like if you want to contrast it to the anime, like it does it worse, then okay, pull up the episode. What does it do? And that could be its own focus. And I know that's not really your focus, that you just wanted to focus on the chapter, and I like that limited focus, because it's something that's sustainable and repeatable. And I also like how simple you're showing the whole page. You're not zooming in or cutting any panels out or rearranging anything. It's just very plain, and you're just kind of writing on the manga itself. That's really great. I like the presentation in general. So I get that that's not your scope, but I guess making these bigger points about later, like the grandness of or in other places and in the anime, I would just be aware of generalization. That's all. And that or just that sort of thing. And To be fair, that's probably what a lot of One Piece YouTubers do, you know, disparaging the anime. Like, I guess it's a Tuesday. Yeah, I guess it's any other day of the fucking One Piece. Yeah, fine, okay. And I'm sorry, you're talking to a guy who watched the One Piece anime specifically. Didn't cut out any filler. Didn't watch fucking One Piece or something. I watched all of it and loved it. Caught up last year. I was happy though to be able to follow you. I have been collecting the manga and reading it physically and everything, so that's fair and everything. Although, yeah, I think you might have talked about it. I don't remember, but I say this to everybody. I don't know if you're watching, but when you're talking about manga, what really blew my mind, or just kind of expanded my mind, I guess, when talking about manga, is that like it's not a page by page. You're scrolling vertically. That's not how manga was made as, you know, like the Oda didn't write this with your consideration of like this is going to be read online with TCB or whatever. Not that you're accusing you of that, whatever. Use the Viz translation, I think, but the not their localization of it. Like it had the kanji specifically. Anyway, and I think you used the colorized version, but I'm happy you didn't talk about the colors or anything, because Oda didn't do that. You know, Oda didn't add any of those colors when he drew it. So I was happy that was not part of the analysis, because it's like, okay, that's a fan who did that, or at least, maybe it wasn't even a fan. Maybe Shueisha is like officially. I don't even know where the colorization really came from, but maybe that's my ignorance. That's fair. What was I going with that? Yeah, no. I like that. Or just as an awareness, I don't remember if you did this or not. You probably did, but like when you're reading the whole thing, just trying to get to the exact chapter you were at. Yeah, right here. When you're reading, you know, you flip to a page and you see the whole thing. You see like all of that. Maybe not in the most explicit detail, and some people's eyes are trained to kind of just look here, you know, and not try to spoil themselves to the other page and everything. But I don't know how much you really considered the page turn of that, because a lot of the time he drew it with that in mind, with like, what is he going to, how does he kind of like do in the flip of a page type of deal. I don't remember how much in this video that was considered, but it's something to consider if it wasn't as much of a thing. But obviously, yeah, the focus on misdirection and all the other things you're talking about was really interesting. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, I'm a little picky with my One Piece now, because I love the shit out of it. But yeah, Luffy's theme doesn't make sense from Flipped on Yonder. Quick thing of focusing on the eye catch instrumentals for each of the Straw Hats. I like that it wasn't just Luffy's. I thought you were going to talk about Luffy's like full theme, like the da 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 da. I'm pretty sure that's the one that's like actually his theme. But obviously he's referring to the eye catch with the da 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 da. Yeah, which I love, and I think you know, I get your point where like it's not making sense for his character, but it's more for a general thing for One Piece or whatever. But then as contrast to like the other characters, which are a lot more fitting or close to their thing. But it's interesting how I like that you talk about the other themes. Some of them don't really age, and not age in a way that like, oh, that's such a dated sound, but it's more like the character has grown past this version of themselves that they were initially coupled with their theme, where like Brook is not very spooky. He's a skeleton, and he's introduced in a spooky arc, but he himself is not a spooky guy. Which is, well, even when one of his powers is astral projection, where he kind of becomes a ghost. It's like, I mean, he is kind of spooky, but he doesn't act spooky, because, and it's like an irony, because he's actually very kind of he himself gets kind of spooked out by things, which is so funny. So it doesn't quite fit him in the same. And then even with Usopp, definitely bottom tier, because very clownish, very circus like okay, yeah, I don't know, but not as very heroic as what he's trying to become, and even in the beginning towards the beginning of the story, that's something he's trying to do. But yeah, no, I like the rumination on this, the casualness. It always feels like kind of one take. I like that you kind of scroll all the characters up like this. That was really nice. Yeah, I just like the brief ruminations that you give. I just want to talk about it. Yeah. All right, and now for all the best videos of the week. Well, I thought were the best videos of the week. I don't know what I was going for. Don't ask. It's fine. This first one's from it's from us, Discotek Media. I like. It's not part of my company, but like I've worked on a lot of their titles. I should say that. I should just say that. A very not so very spooktacular Discotek Day live stream. Finally streaming on YouTube. Yay, compression. Twitch wasn't. We're streaming this stuff, okay? And I think the content ID may have bit in the butt a little bit too. There was a certain thing that I was going to make for it and wasn't gonna work. Just didn't work out. Maybe it'll show up someday, or I make it myself. I don't know. I want to do something with it, but it's fine. It's fine. Actually, I can pretty much say, I think I could say what it is, because we announced it. I was gonna make something for Janko Chie to convince you to buy it, because we need you to. That one was kind of expensive because it's 65 episodes in HD. So on Blue, it's not standard definition. So it's 5 discs for a 1980s slice of life that's never been subbed. That's not. It was fan sub. It was getting fan subs in like 13. They were 13 episodes deep, and how do we tell them? Yeah. So fresh, the completely new translation, 65 episodes in HD, slice of life made in the 80s, next to zero recognition, besides the fact that it's directed by Isao Takahata, which by itself, his full scale of his work and everything, and it's a good show. I think it has a lot of merit. So I watched the whole thing, and was gonna make an explainer video, kind of like one of my stuff on my main channel, and couldn't work out. It's fine. Didn't work out. Pause on it for now. Maybe it'll come out some other time. I don't know. Or maybe I make something. I don't know. It's fine. It's fine. But yeah, I obviously put this in best because I'm biased and I can do that. Hope you enjoyed it, and announcing a lot of exciting things. We announced Belladonna in 4K. Let's go. And oh geez, what else was there? Janko Chie, yeah. I don't want to say something in case I say one that hasn't been announced yet. Ooh, don't say that. Careful. Yeah. We hope you enjoyed that live stream. Yeah, the Lane 25th anniversary isn't going great. Love the title, and this is going really well for Kid Dracula. Definitely the first time I've heard of their channel or talked about them, which makes sense because this video is doing very well compared to a lot of their other vids. Yeah, it's the first vid of theirs to gross over 1,000 views, and now it's close to 20K by the time I'm talking about it, which is great. Hell yeah! For some reason, Lane I know there's that 9/11 one that went pretty viral as well, and I didn't talk about it. Is what it is. I missed it. But this is focusing on the whole NFT thing and other things that Lane's doing to celebrate its 25th anniversary, and I love. The reason it's in the best really is just the approach was so down to earth, casual, not freaking out, kind of like, oh, okay. Yeah, like really chill. And I love that. It's like, this is the kind of like attitude and approach that I want to see on anime YouTube, not as much like the hyperactive or hyperbolic either. I like that Kid Dracula really goes in everything and read the whole statement. Like the bulk of the video really is him reading the producer's statements and everything. I love the his asides and kind of laughing at certain parts and everything, but it was mostly just a very one consistent visual with giving the whole quote bit by bit. I thought it was a lovely chunk of the video, even if it wasn't directly from him. I think the presenting of it was really impactful and excellent. And again, I felt, despite the title, I think the title doing a lot of the heavy lifting, because it shows that that's your sentiment, and you don't have to convey that yourself. You can kind of let the audience be like, oh, NFTs, oh, they didn't deliver on the promise. You don't have to be angry. I like that you present this stuff very like, yep, that's what they're doing. That's how that's going. Yeah. I mean, it's like, I feel like Lane and, I don't know, the shooting the shit kind of vibes, Yeah, I just really liked it. I just really, really enjoyed this. I'm really looking forward to whatever you make next. I loved all the thumbs on your other vids, so I might check them out. Although it is hard for me to motivate myself sometimes. This is why I make Digest, so it prompts me to actually watch these anime YouTube videos, because I don't know if you've felt this or if other people who watch this felt this, but like when you start making them yourself, kind of don't want to watch any others. it's like the guy at the sausage factory being like, hey, he comes back home from work and it's like, hey honey, you want some sausage? And he's like, I guess. Whereas maybe when I'm just thinking of people who work at a sausage factory be like, I really love eating sausage. I can't wait to work at the sausage factory. Thank God that's not happened to me with anime, where I work in the anime industry, being able to work on some of these titles. And that has not happened to me, thankfully. But it I don't know, because maybe because I'm occupying myself more with titles that ain't no way are they licensing that. They're not touching Sally the Witch, bro. They are not touching Himitsu no Akachan. No way. And then the other ones, it's like, oh, it's on Crunchyroll. I'm sorry, where was I? Yeah, I liked the yeah, the vibes were immaculate. Appreciate that you were in 4x3 for actually rendering the video. Nice job. And I don't know, just the Lane vibes are immaculate. You get it. It's like, oh, finally a Lane vid that he's not like a poser, like a new guy finding Lane. And then, look, we've all been there. I remember when I first watched Lane, I'm just like, oh my God, like the fucking yeah. But I feel like we've all been there for first, so it's sort of like, let them learn, let them understand. But I agree. I think there's what's one thing to be like love Lane. Let's all love Lane, and to really embody that and to really like get it. Yeah, I appreciate the various visuals you're using, not just from Lane, but also from the Vocaloid stuff and stuff you're interested in. Or maybe you're not. I don't know. It's just what you decided to show, I guess. Yeah, the whole demeanor, in contrast to the title, and just your very basic presenting of information, just like, here's what's been going on with the 25th anniversary. It's like, maybe they do a Halloween thing. I don't know. Yeah, all of that was really great. I really appreciated it. That was really, really good. The Anime T having a great video on the unparalleled nostalgia of 2000s anime. And I'll admit, I didn't quite, I don't know, I don't remember, maybe I did actually, said it was like a watch later. I might not have. I wasn't as interested with the previous thumbnail, but then you put Haruhi on it, I'm like, yeah, let's go. And I guess also the concern I had, which was quickly assuaded, and I'm sorry I have these concerns in because it's like, this is not the first nostalgia type of 2000, like, let's talk about Toonami kind of video. Not the first one I've watched, not the first one that's been made, for sure. I guess the concern I would have is sort of the, I'm worried, where it says anime nostalgia, that there's going to be some kind of, like, criticalness to, I don't know. You're going to be negative in this video, like, and it's nothing to do with, like, your other videos or anything like that. It was more just this approach, or the subject matter, I guess. Maybe in other videos I've felt that way, or maybe there's kind of like some pushing away from that. or like taking it for granted or not or kind of dismissing it, right? Oh, it's just nostalgia. It's just nostalgia. It's just shut up. Shut up. Shut up. Using nostalgia as a bad term, you know? Don't want that. No, and so I was a little worried about that, I guess that going in. So lovely surprise that it was completely like this is how I got into it, and the titles you saw and how you saw them, the filming you did here, not just obviously on camera, but talking, script like thing that you've normally done, but filming it at like the library you went to as a kid, and the TV and everything, and a lot of this was in 4:3, and talking about that aspect ratio too was really nice, even with how it wasn't super deep in or analytical or something like that. I like the nod to it, at least like acknowledging it. Yeah, and all the different facets and stuff. I felt like towards the end of the video, I was like, yeah, all right, yeah. It didn't have as much of a build up, I guess, but the whole of it, I just really appreciated the love for that you have for this stuff, and the conclusion was nice too, where it's like now I get to kind of talk about it, and just it's all about having a community and finding your people and sharing in that thing. And I think that's what sustains it. I think that's definitely because it's a phase what you're talking about here, where you have that time as a kid, and you have the I don't know the capacity or the you don't have as much free time as an adult, or like as much, you're a little more world weary or something, and these sort of stories fascinate you. And I like that you didn't necessarily put any of these shows down at all, it felt like, and you're really appreciating them, and yeah, I just really enjoy that, the approach here, and the takeaways from it. Yeah, I liked it. Yeah, really. Yeah, there's some parts that I can relate to with like 4 kids and everything like that. And encountering Shonen Jump and stuff like that. But it's cool seeing and also your perspective. Actually, yeah, I really like that you put Hari on the thumbnail because the focus you gave it, where seeing yourself in her, where she kind of didn't have any preconceived or any really caring for gender one way or another, and it's like, yeah, I don't really want to wear dress, lipstick, blah, blah, blah. I kind of want to wear pants and t-shirt, and kind of and the observation that it's like maybe because I'm surrounded by these shonen boy titles and there's something like appealing to that it's like that's kind of something to apply to your own life, and then seeing these shoujo titles being like, oh, she's not afraid to express herself, express her femininity, as well as being placed in this other role. That perspective and that takeaway with Oran was just like really beautiful, and I just was really interesting, and what I want to hear from YouTubers like yourself, or like with every other YouTuber, really, because I've said this before here, that like ourselves are the most unique thing we can bring to this platform. No one else is like me or like you or like other creators. Everyone is unique. So it's sort of, even if your origin story is very similar, right? There's still what you can deliver and what you see out of it and what you can express, that I think is the best thing we can do. And what I'm trying to be better at. I'm not always succeeding. Trying and staying a little more like standoffish and objective, but I'm trying to inject myself more. Yeah, I really liked it a lot. This was wonderful. Mecha by Spooky Pyramid Inu, talking about blue wolves, blue gender, and Volgisaur? I don't remember. Zero Meyer. Is it Zero Meyer? I think it was. Yes. And I like the. Yeah, you did the YouTube thing, and it's pretty smart, where you went right into your first point. You didn't give it any preface of like, it's the Halloween season. I like that you start with Zero Meyer's point. It's hard to sometimes, you're just trying to get your bearings as a viewer, like what's this video about, what the vibes are. But I like that you just jumped into it, and then afterwards with Zero Meyer, and then you were like, "Yeah, I might make this as a annual thing because I enjoy talking about this spooky stuff, and there's a lot of mecha related things." Here we'll talk about this Blue Wolves, which I've never heard of before, and you're talking about it as like a meme, and your defense of it, I'm like, this is my shit, yeah, dude. Like, I love this sort of like appreciation for these titles, and if you don't have an appreciation for them or an understanding, I don't think you should talk about them. And, and I guess there's a difference with this digest of like what I watch and what I'm interested in discussing and everything. But with anime, for me, like, I much prefer watching it from a sympathetic point of view or trying to understand it. And even if you're going to talk about it negatively, and it's just like, I don't think it quite succeeded here or whatever, you just be nice, be nice, I guess, or have the respect for this title. Maybe don't even be nice. Maybe you can take the jabs at it if you want, or everything to really get your point across. But you do have to approach these things with respect. But regardless, I'm happy that you talked about it in a positive light and a constructive light, and just like maybe this is why people didn't quite like it or whatever. And of course the blue gender thing as well, the whole section there. Yeah, it was just all very. I liked that you actually tackled the common criticism of first half is good, second half not so good. Why do people think the first half is good? And what about the second half? Do you think what was the change, and what do you think the perception was? And it was like, oh, that's what it does different. So I felt like I got blue gender, even if I haven't seen it, even if the whole video isn't about that, and it's only 16 minutes, and you're talking about 3 different shows. You're not going to be talking about these for very long. I feel like I got all 3 of them. You really got to the crux of all 3, the ways that I understand them, and not just kind of riffing on them like a certain other video we talked about at the very beginning of Digest, where it was almost the same length as your video here, but talking about one show, and I know less about it than I know about the 3 titles that you've talked about here, because there were substantive points, examples, your personal and community perception, everything, like all that. I think it was just really well-rounded, also with just reverence and respect. Yeah, it's that easy. Well, like the video peer video, thank you very much. Not that you made for me or anything. Yeah. And you know what? I'm going to give the best video of the week to Doreimani. Her video on Sugar Sugar Rune is chaotic but sweet. It's for Mahoween. I wasn't following too much of her Mahoween stuff. She's making a lot of stuff this month, I mean. Holy crap. Constantly putting out her impressions on Magica, and Rebellion and everything like that. And then, various other things. And then, yeah, so Mahoween, and she's enjoying it. So at least from what I watched of this video, she's like, this is great. I should do this more often, or make this a yearly thing. This is just her impressions, or just kind of her talking through the first episode of Sugar Sugar Rune. And, gives the background and stuff like that. But really, it's just plot summary. It's really just describing the whole episode beat by beat. And I found it really enthralling. Yeah. So, like, it's one thing to have a placid plot summary of the whole show, and another to be, like, kind of taking you through it as an audience. Because obviously, like, it's like, I've decided to watch your 16-minute video instead of the first episode of Sugar Sugar Rune, which, for me as an anime watcher, when I choose to watch something, I'm committing to that long. And, probably a lot of fans are like that, right? When, like, you realize this is a 50-episode show. But you came out of this was like, let's just go through the first episode together. And so I, as a viewer, don't have to have the guilt of, like, watching one episode and then never again, if whatever. As a taste tester, right? And it's not just a general video on it. So, yeah, and it's just from that one episode, right? So I loved it for that, for whatever reason. Like, I don't know, it's just really novel about that, I guess. Where it was really just a touristy kind of sampling, where we're just talking to the first episode and let's talk about it. And it's not even an analysis sort of thing, like watch the episode and then come back. You're really taking us through it beat by beat, giving your observations, your humor. Yeah, I really, really liked it. It's kind of it. This is the thing I enjoyed most in this past 2 weeks. Because because it really got me interested in watching the rest of Sugar Sugar Rune, or just watching it in general, because I just felt like maybe it was just that first episode just happened to have a lot to it, you know. It's just they do introduce a good deal and they do a good job, but it really got me way more interested than any than a lot of it, and it actually incentivized me, like, okay, like I have these magical girl shows that I'm watching right now and intending to kind of finish throughout the year. But what are the other ones I want to watch? So, like, that one's definitely one of them. I really got to watch Sugar Sugar Rune. What are the other ones? And I think it was this one, actually. I think it was this one that Definitive Anime Chat like watched this year, and I didn't watch it with them because, well, I think it was a camp or something like that, or I couldn't commit to their group watch. Like, I love being part of their group watches. I really, really do. But they suck up so much of. There's just something about like the regimented one episode a day for 4 days out of the week. It's just not how I watch things. I watch a lot of anime, and I watch it quite often, and sometimes I watch like an 8-episode bursts and then don't watch for a while. I don't know. That's kind of their way of watching things. I appreciate it, and that's obviously gotten me to watch a ton of stuff that I wouldn't have gotten to early, before, which I really appreciated. I love the shit out of. But it's not always for me. Not always, like, I can't commit to that right now. But I watch Heartcatch that way, and I watched Heidi that way, etc., etc. I think they did Sugar Sugar Rune, and man, yeah, I wish I watched it, because I really had no idea about all these different details and stuff like that, and what this is what it's like. Yeah, I just really like this format a lot. I feel like if you did this for every magical girl show, maybe it's a big ask, but even just the first episode of all of them, that'd be so valuable, at least to me. I mean, I don't know. I think I'd be really interested, because that's the thing with a lot of magical girls in particular. I think have the unique challenge that they have to introduce a lot quicker. A lot of mecha shows, they actually, sometimes they're quick, but other times they're not so quick. And they don't introduce the robot in a certain amount of time or whatever, and you're not fully getting what's going on. Magical girls, almost never is it the case where you have to wait to the next episode to fully get the picture. I think the only one that was kind of like that for me was Heartcatch, and that was kind of why I didn't like it at first. I actually kind of thought it was frustrating, because I was hoping for the whole shebang to kind of get to it, I don't know what else. There was other things I was frustrated by with that one, but like, yeah, obviously I ended up liking it. I enjoy the show. I do like it now. But that was a rough start for me because it didn't quite start that way. Maybe those are my expectations, I guess. But yeah, like every other magical girl show, the first episode kind of has to be this dense, because the various concept or whatever, or just things about it just have to make more of a splash or more of a statement. And that's even been the case for the old ones. Like the first episode of Ako-chan and Sally, the first two magical girl shows, they bang. They're pretty good. They're really memorable. I can distinctly remember what happens in both of them, because they set such a tone for the rest of it, especially for those early ones, and probably indicative of a lot of magical girl shows, which are very not formulaic so much as they are very episodic and kind of dealing with whatever, so the first episode has to make such a strong impression, laying all this foundation. So I mean, yeah, I feel like if you did this for a lot of other magical girl shows in particular, this could do really well. Anyway, I really enjoyed this. This was a lot of fun. I loved it a lot. Great job. Okay, that'll do for this installment of AniTube Digest. Thank you very much for watching. You guys are great. You have a great week. Yo, peace.